They fined me $750 for parking my own truck on gravel I poured, but when I slid the original deed across the desk, silence hit the room, like a slammed door. 90 days later, the same board that threatened foreclosure was the one under investigation. Welcome to HOA Karma. I'm a licensed surveyor from Asheville, North Carolina, and I film stories about property rights, neighborhood power, and the quiet kind of revenge that uses the law instead of a bat. If you're new here, make yourself at home. And if you've ever tangled with an HOA, tell me where you're watching from down in the comments. The cabin came to me by accident, or maybe by promise. My father died the previous winter. Heart gave out on the job site. He talked about retiring to a place with trees thick enough to swallow the noise of the city. When I found the abandoned log cabin at the edge of Maple Hollow, 150 years old, sagging but still breathing, it felt like finishing his sentence. I paid $186,000 cash, every savings I had, and spent the spring peeling back rot, sanding beams, and teaching myself that grief sounds like hammer strikes. The first letter from the Homeowners Association arrived before the roof was done. Unauthorized improvement in the historic corridor. Typed in Arial. No signature. $500 fine. The cabin, apparently, sat within a heritage overlay district the HOA claimed authority over, though I hadn't joined, hadn't even known it existed. I called the number at the bottom. A woman answered with the kind of clipped politeness that sharpens each word. This is Marlene Voss, president of the Hollow Hills HOA. You can't just claim that property. It's part of our community trust. It was abandoned. County auction, clear title, recorded April 12th, I said. She paused long enough for a paper shuffle. That was my son's inheritance. You'll be hearing from our council. That sentence lit the fuse. I'd rebuilt 12 roofs, surveyed 2 counties, dealt with zoning boards and tax offices, but nothing prepared me for a self-appointed kingdom of retirees with bylaws thicker than a Bible. Within a week, they posted notice to cease renovation on my porch. By the second week, the local paper printed a letter to the editor calling me a developer vulture. I could have packed up, sold the place, moved closer to my sister in Raleigh. Instead, I poured coffee into my thermos, drove to the county recorder's office, and started digging. The smell of toner and old folders brought me back to Dad's drafting table. That's where I met Claire and I, a clerk with ink-stained cuffs who could flip through plats like a magician. "You're the cabin guy," she said, sliding a binder across. "They've been fighting over that parcel since '92. HOA thinks their boundary extends 200 feet past the creek. It doesn't." I traced the map with my finger. Lot 17B. 1.86 acres. Clear easement to the main road. So their claim's false. "Depends how loud they yell," she said, half smiling. That night, rain hammered the tin roof I just installed. Between thunderclaps, I read through their bylaws, downloaded from a dusty website that still used Comic Sans. Section 4.3. All exterior modifications must be approved by Architectural Review Committee. Section 4.5. Committee jurisdiction limited to member parcels within recorded subdivision. My cabin wasn't listed in their subdivision, never was. Knowledge nugget number 1. Under most state statutes, an HOA's power stops at the platted boundaries recorded with the county. Anything outside that perimeter isn't subject to its covenants, no matter how hard they insist. Still, power isn't about paper, it's about perception. Marlene Voss had both. She organized patrols of volunteers with reflective vests who'd stop by for safety checks. They left flyers, took photos, posted them online. Unauthorized logging. One caption read under an image of me hauling dead branches. A week later, I came home to find orange paint marks on my driveway. Survey stakes that weren't mine. My stomach knotted. I measured them, exactly 18 inches onto my side. They were building a case to claim encroachment. Next morning, I knocked on my neighbor Walt's door. He was 73, a retired postal worker who smelled like pipe tobacco and WD-40. "They're pulling the same stunt they did with my fence," he said, wheezing a laugh. I paid him off, $2.50 fine. Cheaper than fighting. "Not this time," I said. "I'll fight." He nodded slowly. "Then document everything. Photos, dates, times. And keep your cool. They feed on temper. His advice stuck. I set up trail cameras aimed at the property line, labeled every file by timestamp. I started a log, dates, incidents, witness names. I wasn't planning revenge. I was building an archive. Late May, I drove to the HOA's monthly meeting at the community hall. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. About 40 residents sat in folding chairs, murmuring. When my turn came for public comment, I stood, holding the original deed in one hand. I'm the owner of the cabin at 514 Creek Road. It lies outside your subdivision. I've received fines and notices that have no legal basis. Marlene Voss tapped her pen. Our association includes all contiguous lots. You'll need to petition for membership or remove the non-compliant structure. Ma'am, I said evenly, this cabin was built in 1874. Your HOA was incorporated in 1986. You can't retroactively absorb history. Gasps, murmurs, a chair scrape. She flushed red. We'll see what the county says. The meeting adjourned in a storm of whispers. Outside, gravel crunched under my boots. Lightning flickered behind the hills. For the first time, I felt something other than anger, anticipation. If they wanted to see what the county said, I'd make sure the county had plenty to look at. The next morning, I was back at the county office before the blinds were up. Clara brewed her burnt coffee and handed me a stack of old plats. They'll try to use the annexation clause, she said, tapping the corner of one map. But it was never recorded. If you get a certified copy of this, you're bulletproof. I filed the request, paid $27.50, and left with the carbon copy receipt tucked into my wallet. Proof had a smell, like hot toner and dust. That same afternoon, Marlene's crew upped their game. A man in a reflective vest was measuring my porch steps with a tape measure. When I asked what he was doing, he said, checking compliance. I said, with whose rules? He didn't answer, just wrote something on his clipboard. That night, a fresh violation notice appeared on my door. Exterior illumination exceeds approved brightness level, $150 fine. I laughed, but it cracked halfway through. This wasn't about brightness. It was about breaking me down through paper cuts. By the fourth notice, I called my old college friend, Ethan Kane. He was now an attorney specializing in property and HOA law out of Charlotte. He listened while sipping from his thermos. You kept all the letters? Every one, scanned and dated. He whistled. Then we'll fight it on their field, procedural ground. But slow. Let them think you're cornered. He explained the play. File a formal dispute under their own bylaws, force them to respond in writing, and timestamp every exchange. Bureaucracy versus bureaucracy. 2 days later, I mailed a certified dispute of jurisdiction notice to their P.O. box. Return receipt requested. It cost $6.85. Small price for documentation. The next HOA meeting was louder. People were beginning to take sides. A woman named Nora, who ran the general store, leaned toward me and whispered, they tried the same on my cousin's barn. He moved out. Don't let him win. Marlene banged the gavel. Mr. Reeves is in violation of several aesthetic provisions. Ethan had prepped me. Could you specify the article and recorded authority under which those apply to my parcel? She blinked. It's in the master plan. Could you read the recording number into the minutes? Her lips tightened. We'll provide that later. That later never came. About a week after, a deputy knocked on my door for a wellness check. Said someone from the HOA called, claiming I'd been threatening neighbors. I invited him in, showed him my camera feed, the logs, the empty mailbox. He nodded slowly, jotting notes. Seen this before, he muttered. You just keep your documentation. If they trespass, call us first. Harassment wasn't new to him, but it felt new to me. Every small sound outside made me think of another photo being taken, another false complaint filed. I kept working on the cabin anyway, sanding, sealing, reclaiming the walls like therapy. Halfway through June, I got my first tangible win. The county recorder emailed, annexation amendment unrecorded, null per statute. I printed it twice, one copy laminated, the other pinned to the fridge. The HOA, though, doubled down. They put out a community bulletin claiming unauthorized occupation of historical property. I felt my hands shake reading it. Then I noticed something new. People were starting to comment online, asking for evidence. Ethan said, "Good. Let them talk themselves into liability." He helped me file an affidavit of ownership, citing chain of title continuity and non-association status. It was dense, lawful, and beautiful. I mailed copies to their board and the county office, then waited. In mid-July, the first major confrontation came. I woke up to find a work crew marking a trench line across the shared gravel road, my only access point. Marlene stood there in sunglasses, arms folded. "Driveway needs regrading," she said. "Safety hazard." "That's my easement," I told her. "Not according to our engineer." I pulled out my phone, hit record, and read the statute number aloud. Under North Carolina General Statute Section 47F, 3-102, HOAs may maintain common areas, not private easements. This is private. Her lips thinned. "Turn that off. Recording in a public right-of-way is legal. One-party consent state," I said calmly. Knowledge nugget number 2. In North Carolina, recording a conversation is lawful if one party, yourself, consents. Always know your state's consent laws before using recordings as evidence. By that evening, they'd packed up the crew. Small victories felt huge. Early next week, Ethan drove up with a man named Glenn, a retired civil engineer. Glenn squatted by the property line, poking at the stakes. "They're all wrong. 2 feet off the surveyed pin. That's deliberate." He signed a notarized statement right there on my tailgate. The smell of gasoline and pine needles mixed with the click of his pen. Ethan grinned. "Now we wait for them to hang themselves." They will. I uploaded the recording, the affidavit, and Glenn's notarized report into a cloud folder titled HOA Evidence. Redundant backups, just in case. Around that time, HOA watchers online started tagging me. "Stand strong. Document everything." The story had momentum. Are you firmly anti-HOA? Or maybe you've survived one yourself? Drop your best tactic in the comments so the next poor soul knows how to stand up to them. And if any HOA board members are lurking, feel free to explain yourselves down there too. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. The rest of July was paperwork and heat. 95 degrees in the shade. Humidity thick enough to chew. I spent mornings cataloging evidence. Afternoons replacing floorboards, nights staring at the slow blink of the router light as I uploaded files. Each upload felt like armor. HOA pressure turned tactical. They began posting new, proposed amendments to their bylaws, language so broad it could swallow half the hollow. Any adjoining property deemed contiguous by historical use shall be considered under HOA jurisdiction. That phrase, historical use, was their silver bullet. Ethan warned me. They're creating a retroactive net. If it passes, they'll use it to justify everything. We had 10 days before their vote. I decided to dig deeper into their filings. Clara helped me pull archived meeting minutes, some handwritten in shaky pen. In one from 2004, a note caught my eye. Proposed expansion of HOA boundary denied by county commissioners. Lack of consent from property owners. I highlighted it, printed 3 copies. That single line was the smoking gun. At the same time, Glenn found something bigger. Their stormwater permit lapsed in 2019, he said, sliding a faded blue file onto my workbench. Means every time they maintained that drainage ditch, they were technically operating without authorization. Knowledge nugget number 3. Any HOA conducting maintenance on shared infrastructure, roads, ditches, or utilities requires active permits under state environmental rules. Let them expire, and their liability multiplies with each action. The leverage puzzle began forming in my mind. If their drainage ditch crossed my easement, and it did, they were trespassing under an expired permit. I didn't tell them yet. Meanwhile, the harassment ratcheted up. My mailbox got dented. A for sale flyer appeared in it with my address handwritten and a fake phone number. One night I found tire tracks cutting across the edge of my lot. I called the sheriff again. He logged it as possible intimidation. You want me to talk to them? He asked. Not yet, I said. I'm letting them dig their own hole. At the general store, locals whispered support. Nora slid me a free coffee and said, They think you're crazy, but we're all watching. Don't back down. Her words helped, but some nights, fear clawed through. Once I found my son, Jake, 8 years old, staring out the window at headlights creeping by. They won't come here, right? He asked. Not while I'm around, I told him. I meant it, but I slept lighter after that. 3 days before the vote, Ethan drafted a notice of potential liability, addressed to the HOA board, referencing their expired stormwater permit, unauthorized surveying, and pending dispute of jurisdiction. It was 6 pages, perfectly worded. I printed it on thick legal bond, sealed it in an envelope, and hand-delivered it to the HOA office drop box. When I slid it in, I heard the thunk echo inside the metal box, satisfying final. The next evening, I parked outside their meeting hall, not to speak this time but to watch. Through the glass, I saw Marlene pacing. A man in khakis whispered in her ear. She looked furious. Papers waved. A few heads turned toward the window, toward me. I raised a polite hand. No one smiled back. They didn't vote that night. Postponed pending legal review. That's when I knew the tide was shifting. They'd felt the hook. Ethan called later. They'll scramble. Don't respond. Silence is control. So I stayed silent. Rebuilt the porch rail. Trimmed branches. Waited. Late one afternoon, Glenn dropped by with a stack of topo maps rolled under his arm. They regrade that ditch wrong, he said, spreading the papers on my hood. Water's backing up toward their own common lot. That's a violation waiting to happen. I smiled. Let's document it. He used his drone to take photos, time-stamped, geotagged. The angle caught the HOA sign in frame, their name clear. It wasn't revenge anymore, it was precision. Now I had 3 layers of leverage, the unrecorded annexation, the expired permit, and the active trespass via drainage. I didn't tell anyone but Ethan and Clara. I wanted them confident enough to keep walking straight into their own trap. If you've ever been in a fight like this, you know that moment when anger cools into strategy. That's when you become dangerous. How far should an HOA's power reach? Onto your porch, your lawn, your driveway? Where's the line between community and control? Tell me in the comments how you draw it. By mid-August, humidity broke with a thunderstorm that shook the valley. I stood on the porch, watching rain carve the trench they'd cut months earlier. The water diverted perfectly, onto their property. Nature had picked a side. 2 mornings after the storm, a white envelope appeared on my porch railing, sealed in red tape. The HOA logo stamped across the top looked smug. Inside was a notice of emergency board action. Effective immediately, they were suspending all non-compliant property access through their maintained road system. Translation: they wanted to cut off my only route to the main road. I drove straight to Ethan's office in Charlotte. He skimmed the notice, smirked, and said, "Classic bluff. They don't own the road, the county does. Public easement recorded since 1952. He printed me a certified plat, showing that fact, then called a contact at the Department of Transportation. The woman on the other end, voice crisp and tired, said, "If they place a barricade, call us directly. That's obstruction of a public easement." The drive back up felt lighter. Still, when I pulled in, a new sign was already hammered into the dirt. Private road, residents only. A man in a neon vest stood beside it. "You can't park here," he said flatly. "I live here," I answered. He pointed at the sign. HOA order. I pulled the certified plat from my glove box and handed it over. "Read the fine print. County maintained. That means you're trespassing by posting this." He hesitated, then stepped back, muttering into his walkie-talkie. I took a photo, time-stamped, location tagged. That night, Walt knocked on my door with 2 beers and a guilty look. "They told us you forged your deed," he said quietly. "Do you believe that?" He shrugged. "I've seen how they spin things. But no, I don't." He handed me an old binder. Minutes from 86 to 98. Found them in my garage. Maybe they'll help. They did. Inside, a line from 1990's minutes. Board confirms exclusion of legacy parcels north of the creek. My cabin. My land. Their own words. I scanned the page and sent it to Ethan. His reply came in under a minute. That's reversal number 1. Don't reveal it yet. Let them schedule the hearing. It was our first real secret weapon. Their own recorded admission that my parcel was excluded. I tucked the printout into a plastic sleeve, labeled it YXHA. Marlene must have felt the shift. Over the next 2 weeks, the HOA dumped a blizzard of citations, trash placement, unapproved mailbox color, even excessive vehicle idling. Each one went into my evidence binder. But the thing that truly rattled me wasn't the paper. It was the night I caught 2 figures near the edge of the property at 11:47 p.m., flashlight beams, sweeping my yard. I shouted, they ran. One tripped on a root and cursed. Female voice. I sent the footage to the sheriff. He called back next morning. Recognized the car from a local HOA board member. He said carefully, "We'll file an incident report." I wasn't scared anymore. I was done being quiet. Still, I remembered Ethan's words. Don't show your cards until the set piece. So I prepared. I drafted my own public notice for the upcoming annual community meeting, scheduled September 10th. That's where I dropped the hammer. Meanwhile, I tested the leverage. Quietly called the county inspector, a calm man named Ruiz, who spoke like every word cost him 50 cents. You aware their stormwater permit expired? I asked. Got the memo. We're reviewing it. Would you be willing to attend their meeting? As an observer. He paused. If invited through proper channel, yes. Perfect. A week later, the HOA sent one more fine, $1,000 for public defamation. That was the tell. They were scared. So I printed everything again. Deeds, maps, plats, minutes, affidavits, logs. A box labeled meeting, evidence set. When I snapped the lid shut, the sound felt like locking a chamber. If you've ever been in a fight like this, you know that moment when silence feels heavier than shouting. That's when the tables are about to turn. Tell me honestly, how far should an HOA go before someone calls it what it is, harassment? Or at least like the video, if you've ever dealt with the same nonsense. By the time the meeting night came, rain threatened again. I loaded the box into the truck bed, checked the dash cam, and drove toward the hall. Headlights cut through mist. My pulse kept a steady, lawful rhythm. The parking lot was half full when I arrived. Rows of sedans and one silver SUV with HOA magnet stickers on the doors. Through the fogged windows of the hall, I saw silhouettes moving, papers fluttering, voices already rising. I carried the box inside, the echo of my boots bouncing off linoleum. Marlene looked up from the front table, her lips curling. This meeting is for members only. I'm a property owner affected by your actions, I said evenly. State statute requires open access for any party under board dispute. The crowd shifted. Someone whispered, "He's right." I set the box beside the podium and sat in the back. They began the agenda, budget, landscaping, pet policy, and then the item, unauthorized occupancy, Creek Road parcel. Marlene straightened her stack of papers like a conductor before the overture. We have determined Mr. Reeves' cabin violates our community boundaries and covenants. Ethan, seated quietly 2 rows up, raised a hand. On what recorded authority? Her eyes narrowed. We'll submit that to council after this meeting. Perfect, he said. Then allow this to be entered into record. He held up a laminated page, the 1990 minutes Walt had given me. Board confirms exclusion of legacy parcels north of the creek. Gasps rippled. She banged her gavel. Out of order. But the damage was done. People started talking over one another. Someone shouted, "Wait, that's official minutes, right?" Another, "Why is she denying it?" I stayed quiet, hands folded. That silence was more powerful than any argument. 2 nights later came the retaliation storm. A county inspector appeared unannounced, clipboard in hand. Anonymous complaint, he said. Noise violations, unauthorized fuel storage, waste management. He looked embarrassed, going through the motions. Honestly, I don't see an issue here. It's the HOA, I said. He nodded, scribbling. We'll note that. Then came the social smear. Posts on neighborhood pages calling me a squatter, claiming forged deeds, even suggesting criminal record. I documented everything, screenshots, URLs, timestamps. The lowest point came when Jake's school called. Someone had emailed administration alleging unsafe environment at our home. Principals sounded awkward, apologetic. We have to log it. I thanked her and hung up. Sat in the kitchen with my head in my hands. For the first time, I felt the exhaustion hit, the kind that seeps into your bones. When Jake came home, he saw the look on my face. You okay, Dad? I forced a smile. Yeah, buddy. Just tired of paperwork. He handed me a crumpled drawing. Our cabin, sunlight breaking through clouds, and us standing in front of it. It's our house, he said. I pinned it above my desk. That's where I found my second wind. Ethan called that evening. They're imploding. 2 board members resigned after seeing those old minutes. But Marlene's doubling down, calling an emergency enforcement hearing next week. Good, I said. That's where we finish it. He hesitated. You sure you're ready for the heat? I've been building for this. We met the next day with Glenn to finalize evidence sequencing. He spread blueprints and inspection logs across my kitchen table. Here's where their stormwater trench crosses your parcel. See, you own 12 feet of that line. With the expired permit, that's direct liability. Ethan grinned. Reversal number 1 is locked. Knowledge nugget number 4. Ownership of even a small portion of shared infrastructure, if properly deeded, can give a property owner oversight rights. Combine that with permit lapses, and an HOA's maintenance actions become violations. We prepared a short statement for the hearing, just 2 sentences long. It would be enough. Outside, the sun dipped behind the trees, painting the valley orange. I watched light spill over the cabin logs we'd restored, felt the old boards creak under my boots, and realized how much had changed since that first letter. This fight wasn't just about property. It was about the right to live without being bullied by bureaucracy. Ever been hit with bogus HOA fines or rules? What's the wildest one you've heard? Paint color, mailbox, or maybe lawn length? Let me know down there. I read every one. When the night came still, I closed the binder, exhaled, and whispered, let's finish this right. The day of the enforcement hearing felt heavier than it should have. Air thick, sunlight blinding off windshields in the community lot. I wore a pressed shirt, dark jeans, and boots dusted from the road. Ethan came in behind me, calm as ever, briefcase swinging. Glenn carried the rolled topo maps under one arm, thermos steaming in the other. Inside, the room was half audience, half jury. Residents filled every folding chair, murmuring. The fluorescent hum was constant, like static in my skull. Marlene stood at the podium, hair lacquered into position, stack of manila folders in front of her like sandbags. Mr. Reeves, she began, you are here regarding continued violations of community policy and unauthorized occupancy within HOA bounds. I nodded once. Ethan opened his case, pulled out a clear sleeve, and laid a single document on the table. Before any hearing proceeds, you should be aware this notice of jurisdictional challenge remains unresolved, and per your own bylaws, no fines or enforcement may occur during that period. She blinked fast. That matter is under review. Ethan smiled faintly. Then we'll wait. The silence stretched until she snapped. Proceed with your presentation. Glenn unrolled the map, his thick fingers smoothing the edges. This blue line is your drainage trench, he said, his voice steady, carrying across the room. The permit for it expired in May 2019. The trench crosses private parcel 17B, his land, without recorded easement. That's trespass under state code. He pointed at the coordinates printed along the edge. If it backs up, your HOA bears full liability for property damage. Insurance won't cover it because the work wasn't authorized. A few residents leaned forward, whispering. One man muttered, wait, they never renewed that permit? Ethan slid another sheet across, the 1990 minutes confirming the parcel exclusion. And for good measure, here's your own record verifying Mr. Reeves was never part of your association, which means every fine, notice, and inspection you've issued is null. Marlene's face went pale, then red. This is out of context. Ruiz, the county inspector I'd invited, stood from the back row. His badge glinted in the light. Not out of context, he said simply. I reviewed the same records. Their permit is indeed expired. This property's not under HOA jurisdiction. That was it, the neutral authority. The sound in the room changed. You could feel credibility drained from her, like air from a tire. Marlene tried to recover, straightening her notes. Regardless, his tone online and at meetings has been inflammatory. Ethan cut in softly. Tone is not a legal category. Laughter rippled, hesitant but real. I reached into the box and pulled out a folder labeled Evidence Log. Every letter, every timestamp, every photo. I kept all of it, I said, voice steady. You find me for brightness levels, mailbox colors, noise, and a truck on gravel I poured myself. You sent false reports to my kids' school. You trespassed at night, and yet I never broke a single law. The gavel slammed once, then twice. Marlene's voice shook. This hearing is adjourned pending council review. I packed up calmly, clicked the box shut. Visual beat number 1, the moment the latch snapped. You could almost hear the echo roll through every hallway they'd ever weaponized against a homeowner. Outside, the late afternoon light hit my truck like gold. Glenn clapped my shoulder. They're done, he said. Almost, I answered. They just don't know it yet. That evening, Ethan and I drafted a formal notice to the HOA's insurer, attaching Ruiz's statement, Glenn's maps, and the expired permit documentation. The insurer's risk department responded within 48 hours requesting clarification on potential liability exposure. That phrase was bureaucratic code for panic. We sent them everything. If you were me, would you have pushed for damages or focused on reform? Tell me below. I'm curious how you'd balance justice and community repair. The next morning, the local news station left a voicemail asking for comment on environmental compliance issues at Hollow Hills HOA. I smiled without calling back. Let the dominoes fall on their own. By Friday, Marlene called an emergency board session. I didn't attend, but Walt did. He texted me 3 words halfway through. They're cracking, buddy. And for the first time since this started, I slept 8 full hours without waking to phantom headlights. By Monday morning, the Hollow Hills HOA was a live wire. Emails leaked faster than they could patch them. Nora from the general store handed me a printed screenshot. Someone had forwarded her the chain. Subject line: Urgent, insurance review pending. Under it, Marlene's desperate sentence: We cannot allow external auditors to examine the maintenance records. Destroy drafts immediately. That was their final mistake. Ethan called before lunch. We're filing an open records request under the nonprofit disclosure statute. They might claim exemption, but if they've billed residents or handled funds under public permits, it counts as quasi-governmental. They'll have to hand over everything. I could hear papers rustling on his end, his pen tapping. Once we have those emails, you'll see resignations by the weekend. He wasn't wrong. That same afternoon, the county compliance office announced an informal review of maintenance and communications practices within Hollow Hills HOA. Ruiz had forwarded our documentation to them. The press picked it up within hours. The next night's community meeting was standing room only. Flashing camera phones, murmurs, even a local reporter in the corner with a tripod. I stood off to the side, not to gloat, just to witness. Marlene tried to hold the gavel steady. This meeting will come to order, she said, voice cracking. From the crowd. You lied to us. And my assessment money went where? I didn't say a word. The evidence had already spoken louder than any speech. Ethan stepped forward when she tried to adjourn. Point of order. By your own bylaws, a majority vote of present members can move to recall the board. Hands shot up. 42 out of 53. The motion passed. Marlene's gavel froze midair. The reporter zoomed in as Ruiz, the inspector, walked to the front. His calm drawl carried over the chaos. For the record, the county recognizes Mr. Reeves' ownership and confirms the HOA operated outside its jurisdiction. Visual beat number 2. The microphone catching raindrops through the open hall door. Ruiz's voice under the patter of water. Marlene's resignation letter trembling in her hand. It was over. In the following days, the dominoes really started falling. The insurer suspended their coverage, pending investigation. The bank froze the HOA's account. A state compliance officer requested an ethics hearing for misuse of funds. 2 board members resigned outright, citing undue pressure from leadership. Through it all, I kept working on the cabin, new window trim, fresh stain on the porch, small things that reminded me I was still building, not just fighting. Walt stopped by with his wheezy laugh and said, "They're calling you the surveyor of justice now." I laughed, half embarrassed. Let's not jinx it. But it felt good to smile again. One evening, as the news replayed clips of the chaotic meeting, Jake sat beside me on the couch. "Dad, are they going to jail?" "Some might pay fines," I said carefully. "Some might lose jobs. What matters is, they won't bother people anymore." He nodded, leaning on my shoulder. "Can we build the treehouse now?" "Yeah, bud," I said. "We can." Still, I wasn't finished. Ethan wanted a formal settlement to lock in reforms, term limits, transparent budgets, and open records. "They'll want something in return," he said. "Then they get peace," I replied. "And I get the promise they can't hurt anyone else." Before we filed, I turned to the camera one last time that week. "What do you think? Should every HOA have open records rules and term limits by law? Or would that make governance impossible? Drop your opinion below, because this fight's bigger than just one hollow." That night, lightning again over the ridge. I stood at the window, the cabin lights glowing warm behind me, and thought about the next step. Not revenge, but repair. 2 weeks later, the reform meeting was held in the same hall where it all began. The air smelled different this time. Less tension, more sawdust and coffee. I sat near the back, not as the enemy anymore, but as the reason things were finally changing. An interim board had been appointed by the county ombudsman. 3 residents, 1 outside auditor, and 1 ethics advisor from the state. Walt had been voted in as community liaison. The man couldn't stop smiling. Ethan leaned close and whispered, "They're ready to deal. Keep it simple." Marlene wasn't there. Word was she'd accepted a plea deal, probation, restitution for misused funds, and permanent removal from any board position statewide. When the chair read that aloud, the room murmured but didn't cheer. It wasn't triumph, it was closure. The chair continued. "Mr. Reeves has agreed to waive civil damages in exchange for structural reforms to this association." He read the bullet points one by one. Term limits for board members, maximum 2 consecutive terms. Mandatory publication of budgets and meeting minutes within 10 business days. Independent audit every fiscal year. Rollback of illegal assessments collected since 2021, refunded within 90 days. Community access charter guaranteeing property owners' right to attend, record, and speak at all meetings. The vote passed unanimously. That was reversal number 2, the reform deal. The leverage I'd built through months of silence, traded for something bigger than payback. When it was done, the chair turned toward me. "You've helped us start fresh," he said. I stood, nodded once, and replied, "Just make sure no one has to fight this fight again." Afterward, Walt clapped my back so hard I almost spilled my coffee. "Never thought I'd see this place vote for transparency," he said. "Sunlight fixes rot," I told him. Nora stopped me at the door with a paper bag of cinnamon rolls. "For the surveyor of justice," she teased. Outside, the afternoon light hit the hills like gold leaf. Jake was waiting by the truck, holding a wooden model of the treehouse we'd been sketching. "Can we build it this weekend?" "You bet," I said. We drove home slow. The cabin stood ahead, restored and bright, its logs glowing against the line of autumn trees. On the porch, I pinned a fresh document beside the old ones, a framed copy of the Community Access Charter. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder that ordinary people can force fairness if they stay patient and lawful. If you believe I fought the right way, and this is how it should end, say a few words in the comments for your friend who's in their own HOA mess. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and share this story, because every reform starts with someone who refuses to fold. The news ran a short piece the following week. Hollow Hills HOA agrees to oversight reforms following investigation. Insurance reinstated. Refund checks issued. Residents calling it the best board in decades. The first community picnic was held on the common lot I was once banned from entering. Kids ran through sprinklers. Glenn grilled burgers, and Clara from the county office stopped by to drop off a signed copy of the corrected plat. Before leaving, she winked. Told you it was just about how loud they yell. That night, I lit the porch lamp, opened my logbook, and wrote one final line. Case closed. Reforms in motion. Community restored. Then I looked out at the gravel drive, where headlights once brought threats, and saw only the faint shimmer of rain in the distance. Next case will start when another letter curls in someone's mailbox fire pit. But for now, the valley is quiet.